Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's ILTA product briefing webinar. My name is Mike Manning, and I'll be moderating today's call. I'd like to start with a few housekeeping items. Today's session will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to everyone on the call. We'll have time at the end of the call for questions. Please enter the questions in the questions window of the control panel. And if you need any assistance, please use the chat window of the control panel. We have a good amount of information to share for today's presentation. We will show you how firms can add valued intranets with expertise location and social collaboration around clients, matters, and practices. Specifically, our agenda today will cover the evolution of legal intranets, how the legal industry can use expertise location with social collaboration, and then we'll share with you the integration of the firm directory, social, and Handshake software, along with some key intranet use cases. Our presenters today are Ramin Vasu, Vice President of Product for Neudesic's the Firm Directory, Glenn LaForce, EVP and Chief Strategy Officer at Handshake Software, and Jim Tuvell, Senior Consultant with Fireman Company. We'd like to keep today's call as interactive as possible, so please submit your questions in the question window of the control panel. I'll try to ask some of them as we go along. And with that, Ramin will share with us very briefly about the partnership. Ramin?
Thank you, Mike, and welcome everyone. So in today's webinar, you'll be hearing from three partners that all work together: Neudesic with Firm Directory, Handshake Software, and Fireman Company. We've all come together in different ways to integrate our thought leadership and try to add innovation to legal intranets. So you'll see some examples today, actually, that we'll share of clients where all three of us have combined our respective areas. The relationship between Neudesic and Handshake is one of ISV integration. So a lot of the work in terms of adding capabilities like expertise and social as part of the Handshake offering has been done up front. And the relationship between Fireman Company and Neudesic is one of solution development. So again, with that in mind, I'll turn it to our first presenter, Jim Tuvell. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. So looking at what we think where intranets and law firms are going, I wanted to begin with where we're coming from, because I think one thing that we all can say about the intranets that we've all developed over the years is it's always been a product about evolution. Firms have started intranets with different projects and different goals in mind, but as the technology got embedded in law firms, we've all grown and expanded their scope and their relationship to how we do work and how the firm does work in different ways. But the first generation, starting at the beginning of legal intranets, was, I think, mostly about reducing mass email, reducing the need to do a lot of printing. It was really largely to get telephone directories online, to streamline internal communication, to put those firm newsletters and things someplace where people can reference. And in this generation of portal, we started to see the first knowledge management and library repositories online. We're talking about links to forms that have been curated by departments and links to resources, but overall it was a reference point for attorneys to go and reference. But just as useful as that was, it was a place where attorneys and staff went, looked something up, and left and went somewhere else to do their work. So although it was a valuable investment, it was limited in the impact it had on the business of law, which brings us to our second generation of intranets. And this is where I think a lot of law firms are today. It's all about system integration. It's a much more content-rich experience, and we've introduced matter pages into the system. So as creating the intranet, we went out by and large and collected all the information we wanted to and put it inside a matter page. So rather than make attorneys go to 15 different places, they can go to one to look something up. And as time went on, because I think this generation spanned a number of years and almost completely encapsulates the coming of age of SharePoint, vendors like Handshake were in there helping firms do integration, and a lot of law firms started to reap the benefits of this kinds of systemization of their content. Also, I think in this generation, social started to become a little bit more mature in the consumer marketplace, and a lot of firms started dabbling, bringing it into the workplace. but I think there was some struggle because bringing social into this generation of portal was somewhat of a disconnect because social wasn't necessarily driving the business. It was a valuable means of collaboration and it's a valuable means of communication, but it wasn't quite integrated. And given that context, let me share with you some thoughts about where we think portals are going, specifically in the context of our partnership, but in general as well. So the third generation of portal, I think, goes beyond, leverages all of the work that the industry has done around integration, and we're getting past it into work enablement. So rather than have the portal be that reference point, that point where people go look something up to answer a question and then go do work, why not tune the portal to be the place where attorneys do work itself? So the portal itself should be tuned to the lawyer. It should be tuned to giving them the information that they need to get them started on their next task or give them the next step in that next task. Pages, including the home page, should be very targeted to the user persona, but not necessarily the typical persona that we always think of, like a partner or associate or a paralegal. We're talking about a persona like a work product generator, which is much more actionable and much easier to craft content around for someone to have a high degree of effectiveness with giving them more information. So some of the key factors, as you see on screen, of what we think the future of intranets are going to be are these persona-driven workspaces. We've started to see some of this in the marketplace already with firms developing highly focused apps on their intranet, but overall having these experiences crafted to make sure attorneys are being as efficient as possible and leveraging all of our experience of system integration is really key. The second part of it, expertise location, I think is just never going to go away. We've seen a lot of focus on the rise of enterprise search. We've seen a focus on the rise of products like the firm directory that allow us to curate declarative expertise, and on the enterprise search side, craft algorithmic expertise based off of all of the data that exists on the network. And marrying these two things together starts to provide additional value and synergies, because we can go through and have a high degree of confidence that the people who declare their expertise inside a profile product can then have that validated through search, and search can pick up some of the artifacts from the portal to increase its own relevancy. So it's a nice virtuous circle. And being that law firms are just going to grow and grow, the idea that you're ever going to completely understand and be able to leverage the expertise of a partner who joined the firm last week on the other side of the country is only going to be enhanced by leveraging these kinds of technologies. The third, and I think one of the more important and transformative options in the future intranet, I think, is driving non-email communication. We talk to lawyers a lot every year, and I don't think one lawyer has ever said, you know what, I really would love to receive more email today. So we want to find ways to enable lawyers to work without adding to the burden of their inbox, to try to throw them a lifeline to solve some of that pain. And when we start crafting these persona-driven work experiences, leveraging social tools and embedding them in the system, if the lawyers are there and they're active with the page and they're getting work done, then it's easier for them, I think, to post a comment to a group, an individual, or a team in the context of the tasks and the work product and the document and the pages and the matter that they're doing than it would be to exit that environment, go over to Outlook, craft an email, and have the communication siloed somewhere else. So not only, I think, it has a potential of a streamlining effect of using social tools for non-email communication, but it also provides that context of expertise. So pulling in those conversations around the matter, fully respecting security, because we don't, if a matter is secure or a document is secure, you want the conversation around it also to be secure in the appropriate way, but indexing that back into enterprise search just focuses and adds additional value when you're talking about the algorithmic expertise. And finally, cross-channel availability. I think we can all agree that the boundaries of where we work are pretty much gone. So any future intranet is going to have to be equally as effective on a mobile device versus a desktop versus a Mac in the airport or at a client site. Lawyers are going to choose to work where they choose to work in order to be the most productive. And really adopting and embracing, especially mobile device capabilities, open up new options. You have mobile notifications that can go out for things that are clearly important to the firm. And mobile devices, I would posit, would be potentially an easier path to skim through feeds and communication than leveraging those precious desktop hours in the office when they're trying to get client work out the door. So at Fireman Company, we've put together a Potemkin site that you'll see on the next slide that illustrates some of these ideas. This isn't a real website. This is a lightning rod for conversation. So what your firm might develop as the future at intranet might look radically different, but I would say it's going to encapsulate many of these ideas, in that the homepage has to be about business. It's got to be about the lawyer, and it should be reinforcing not only the ability for the lawyer to get in, get to their next task, and get working, but give information that's going to reinforce firm policies and things, such as how many days a matter's been inactive to reinforce closing and retention policies. As you see here in our fictitious law firm, they have a tasking process that keeps the lawyer focused on the things that they should be doing next and the thing they should be doing after that. And most importantly, on the right is the roll-up of the feeds. So everywhere, this is their personal feed from anything in the site, and not only leveraging person-to-person communication, but leveraging this for system-to-person communication. So those emails that go out or get traditionally posted to the intranet about accounting updates or committee assignments or reports coming out can all be put into one feed where they can consume at their leisure, at their desk, in their mobile device, or wherever. Going to the next slide and moving down the page, we're bringing in recent documents and recent matters. And because one thing we hear time and time again is that lawyers want to get in and are typically trying to do the thing, restart what they were doing the last time they sat down at their desk to work. So this just brings out straight front and center that information, and a lot of these boxes are all driven by data from the system integrations we spoke about earlier and by search, leveraging search as a development platform to keep those, because if the indexes are up to date, all your pages will be up to date as well. So when a lawyer moves into a matter page, as we'll see on the next slide, instead of putting everything in neat boxes side by side, we're keeping it very clean, but giving the lawyer the ability to jump down by clicking on sort of a table of contents at the top, and giving them the information they need to do their job. So if this is work product generation, I'm going to see something slightly different, and perhaps everyone in the department is going to see where we are as far as our revenue goes, especially on a fixed fee engagement, just to make sure everyone on that fixed fee team understands how much is left before the matter becomes unprofitable. And clicking to move down the page, we bring in documents, but we would never suggest trying to replace a well-established and well-used line of business system. Exposing documents in this way gives the ability to add value and do things such as create a my practice filter, something that's traditionally not possible in most document management systems. Because if I were in a large matter and that has multiple facets, I'm going to be mainly focused in those that are dealing with my subject area. So it's a quick way to filter down. And creating something like a my working file. So lawyers can get back to having their personal working file as they did years ago before everything, all files and email were centralized. And it allows them to create their own hierarchy, their own customization for their own productivity that does not clutter up document management and potentially complicate a retention policy. Moving down the page a little, adding other things like matter context. We know that lawyers who are more in tune with clients, businesses, are better service providers to those clients. So we can pack things in here as well as resources that we'd like to and organize them in different ways depending on the persona. We're just exposing a lot here as an example. So moving down to the next slide, taking documents as an example, on the right we started to do things like inserting other content because it is very valuable to see things side by side. And on the next slide you'll see that we can slide content in. So the user can self-select some of the things and ideas that they want to see next to each other. So the scenario here may be they're working on a file and want to know if it's ever been sent out to the client yet, so they can see the email associated with the matter file as well as the files that they're working on now. And additionally, in the next slide, we can see taking additional actions. We're just snapping that next step into the attorney's hand every single point and allowing them to edit or convert to a PDF or pin it to their working file or do other core functions. So things that they need to do but don't necessarily force them to go out into the default client. Next slide. So having said that, and having actually one more slide forward, the other thing I did want to mention is things like the matter file are also great sources for embedding that social context, because the matter team itself, I think, can yield the best value of having that persistent communication, especially with a dispersed user group. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ramin to talk about social collaboration.
Thank you, Jim. So social collaboration has been around a long time, and certainly at Neudesic, we've been invested in the technology for a good 7 years. There's been obviously a lot of value cross-industry. I think what's notable in terms of some of the statistics that probably you might be considering is obviously email reduction, reserving email for those critical client communications, basically allowing your employees to spend more time that's client-facing and leveraging social communities, which are much better suited for capturing knowledge. As you can see by this one statistic, 74% of businesses are reporting faster access to knowledge using social software. So that in itself is a pretty key use case that we've seen in legal, is building communities of trust, which requires a certain formula where you can surface knowledge, search knowledge, and also have it relevant to new employees like laterals that come into the firm who can from day one get up to speed on client practice or matter-centric type of information using these types of communities. Also, social collaboration lends itself naturally to people-based expertise identification. It is the people within and in some contexts outside of your firm, if you're working with outside counsel, for example, or even with alumni, where expertise can come into that social workflow. So being able to have these linked in a cohesive way, whereby through the social conversation you identify experts, you add credibility to their expertise based on comments and questions that they're answering, that's a critical use case. The little bit of history of how, at least from our perspective, how we arrived here. We've always kind of focused on, as Jim mentioned, work-enabled type of social use cases. In the past few years, Gartner, Forrester, and other firms have covered us in the context of building legal intranets that are social-enabled. And we started to really, about 4 years ago, really focus on the expertise location piece. And about 2.5 years ago, released Firm Directory, which is a legal industry-specific form of profiling and expertise linked to a directory of people. But as you can see on the right, there is many ways that social can be weaved in and be seamless in the context of an intranet, making it more interactive. On the lower right, Glenn, following my talk, will actually show us a demo of how it's integrated into their application in the context of key use cases like search or matter discussions. Two key use cases that I'm sure at the start, what we're seeing, at least in our client base in legal, two key KPIs that firms are targeting. One is email conversion to work-enabled social. And that's really about capturing institutional knowledge, tacit knowledge, and making it available with the right kind of security and privacy parameters so that it can be used effectively within the firm. The other is that as these communities are formed, that these kinds of communities have flexibility to share information from one community to another, but also have the nuanced functionality to be able to capture security and privacy. So a simple example of that is if there is a practice-specific best practice community and a discussion happens there and it's a secure community, having the ability in a contextual way to share a piece of information in another group, but also being able to support the firm's strategy around ethical wall support at the item or conversation level. Here's an example, and this is an example of a client, Bilson, that all three of us have worked on, Fireman, Handshake, as well as Neudesic. Here's an example of their intranet, and as you can see, here's where information around both clients and other discussions will come together in the context of a secure social feed. So Client Buzz, which is rebranded here in the context of Neudesic Pulse Social, is a secure way in the context of a particular workflow, in this case clients, to foster and surface conversations in real time, and then be able to solicit engagement from employees. And one way of doing that is simply commenting on it, sharing that post, as well as transferring it between one group to another. Further going forward with this theme of work enablement, what we've been focused on, specifically with our partnership with Handshake, is contextual enablement of social. So one example of that on the left, as you can see, is surfacing firm directory profile information with firm directory skills and expertise taxonomy directly within search within Handshake Software. Or on the right, adding a tab where practice discussions can be surfaced, again with security and privacy rights, but trying to create those knowledge communities. And these practice discussion groups have a lot of layers of functionality which helps with employee engagement. For example, email integration, granular notification to know what's exactly going on, being able to respond to conversations from your email or mobile client as well. So kind of linking that now to expertise location and at least our area of focus around expertise. Social obviously involves people being interactive and engaged. And what we found is that directories are typically one of the most used applications within legal intranets. Building on that and trying to capture a full 360 view of employee experience includes a combination of capturing all of their experience profile fields as well as a skills and expertise taxonomy. But in order to get the most validated information, we think that it's very helpful to enable functionality like approval workflow, like deep system integration or peer-based validation of skills or any profile information. And then another key factor that I think is important is we've seen very complex type of advanced search requirements in legal. And so being able to look at any kind of information in a profile or in people search and simply being able to pivot on that or combine that pivot with multiple aspects of experience is another key use case. Obviously, mobile is important, but I think what we've seen in the last year and a half is mobile has become even more important around the ability to find the right people, being able to filter down to the appropriate kind of experience sections to identify their expertise while they're at meetings and to be able to contact information and people directly from a mobile device. Skills and expertise, and our approach to that is this ability to actually have a structured kind of a skills taxonomy that's real-time, that's validated, that can be peer-based or system-based validated information. And what this is really helpful for, especially as part of our integration with Handshake, is it allows you to have kind of a framework for what experience means to your firm that you can then assign not just to people, but also to the matters or the clients that they're working with. One of the key factors that I think will also be important and that we've seen called out numerous times, including this recent award by Nielsen Norman for 2016 Intranet Design, and is actually user experience. It's very important in terms of adoption. And this leading law firm that was cited in this report is actually the only law firm that's called out. And one of the key areas that they're called out on is their innovative use of a firm directory, which is Neudesic's firm directory. And as you can see, it has the same functionality in the context of a legal intranet. We support SharePoint integration out of the box. And one of the key factors is the ability to be able to attract attorneys to easily come into this kind of user experience, search for people and their expertise, and actually go in depth on people's profiles. This is another joint account of all three partners that have worked together to make this client a success. And so finally, I just wanted to leave you with some key points around best practices that we've seen both on social and expertise. One is that you'll probably want to measure the success of any social project based on adoption. Throughout our conversation, I've mentioned secure social. For us, that means that being able to create a sense of trust with your employees, and especially front-facing employees like attorneys, business development, marketing teams, that the information that is shared is going to be secure and is private. One way to do that is to ensure that the data that's happening in your system is fully under the firm's control. With Neudesic, most of our implementations have been a secure on-premise server where all the data is actually under the firm's control and we don't have access to it. Even the branding of the social experience is specific to the firm. This helps create a trust factor that it's a firm-supported application and can be used with the same level of trust as email. However, people aren't going to just stop using email and start using, discussion threads in the context of an intranet. There is a conversion, there's a cultural shift there. So having rich email integration that has granular support, both in terms of inputting information, meaning that you could potentially CC or BCC an email distribution list and have that email go directly into context of a knowledge community that's using a social conversation thread. So that's a way to input information. That's a key use case. And another one is just notifications. Being notified of something that happens in a community, a social community, being able to reply via email and have that come back into the context of that specific conversation. I've mentioned contextual social in the context of key workflows. We see that some of the areas where it's very beneficial is client discussions. This could even involve external access by a client to a very secure group where the conversations that the client sees are separate from the conversations that employees see. Matter-centric discussions is another example, but also industry and practice-centric communities we've seen a lot of. In order to support and foster the development and use of these communities, privacy and support for your ethical wall policy is key, and that's one of the key things that we focus on in the creation of these communities. And then also finding innovative ways to link social with expertise is important, we think. So as people are actually making comments, having discussions, one example is an ability to simply be able to ask a free-form question and be able to open that up to the community of users for an answer. But in some cases, especially with larger firms, you don't really know who to direct that question to, especially if it's a experience-based question that has multiple facets, like industry, practice, and one or two multiple skill requests. So in order to do that, one linkage between social and expertise profiling is simply the ability to mention a community of users or employees based on their skill capture. So going back to that skill taxonomy, actually mentioning those skills, based on that skill capture, those appropriate employees will be notified, and as they come in and answer questions, their credibility in terms of expertise is also reinforced. Finally, we think that a people-based experience system, as well as your social implementation, should leverage any kind of data sources that you have, and in order for it to be predominantly pre-populated. Our typical implementations, we see that up to 90% of information exists, but it's in disparate databases or applications. So one of the key strategies you should be thinking about is unifying that into one common user experience. And lastly, capturing granular search. So we think that the ability to add custom filters and facets on the fly is important in order to meet your expertise search requirements, and then obviously being able to extend that to the mobile application experience as well. And lastly, one of the things that we're excited about, and again based on our client and industry feedback within the legal industry, has been taking this concept of expertise and people directories and extending that to other areas of your firm where experience is important. So Matters is just one example of that. Being able to profile a matter, have a matter directory where experience, expertise, and other relevant information like lead attorney, opposing counsel, or financial information can be surfaced. So this is another great way to think about how people-derived experience and expertise can link to the actual work that's being done within a firm. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Glenn?
All right, thanks, Ramin. Just a little bit of background while I share my screen here. What Handshake's really known for here is bringing in all the firm's knowledge, the financial system, the DMS, the CRM, and now the firm directory into one place in one unified view. And the reason this is important is it allows the attorneys to become more efficient in their practice and better manage their business. As Jim was talking with third-generation intranets, what we find is firms that implement a third-generation intranet find the attorneys often living in two places, in their email, because that's obviously still going to be open, but also within the intranet. And as the firms start to move towards more of a social collaboration, and we're absolutely thrilled about what Neudesic's doing around that, the intranet's really going to be the place where the attorneys manage their business and go to practice. With attorneys that really leverage this third-generation intranet, it helps them become more profitable and more efficient. I'm going to start here with the concept of a customized landing page here. And as Jim mentioned with the different personas and adoption rates, firms that actually leverage this customized view have the attorneys really work in this environment every day. So this landing page is all about me. I'm seeing things like my work product and KPIs for billable hours and some news. But one key integration point that we've done with the firm directory is that pulse feed. And this is a roll-up of everything that I subscribe to. So I am an IT attorney based in a specific office, working on specific clients and matters. All those feeds are pulled up into a beautiful roll-up that allows me to every morning come in and see what's happening, allow me to manage, allow me to share documents, collaborate, and contribute to the different areas that I'm interested in. Another place that we're taking the contextualization of the social collaboration is in a practice-centric view. So let me move to a practice page. So practice discussion is very, very important. You can see as I move into the tab for practice discussion, I have the ability to comment here. I have the ability to @mention, as Ramin talked about. I can share documents, share ideas, share events that we're doing to allow us to further generate business from marketing or cross-sell. A lot of different variety of pieces of information that can be shared in a practice-centric view. Another key view that we're pulling this into is within client and matter views. So as I move into a different screen here where I'm in a centricity, where I'm seeing things like my financials and my documents and my most recent work, I can go into a client or a matter, and we'll do this around a specific matter centricity, where we can go in and have that discussion and collaborate in real time with the different members of this trial team. Really taking the contextualization of the different conversations that we have, it really promotes attorney efficiency and really eliminates the need for email. Another place where we're contextualizing the firm directory's Pulse product is within search. So I'm going to run a search here for a particular client. And the client I've run a search for is General Motors. Now, in this enterprise search environment, I'm seeing a lot of different results. I'm seeing documents from my DMS. I'm seeing time entries. I'm seeing people, news hits, a lot of different things. But I'm also seeing the client and matter pages that we have from our portal. And I can hover my cursor over the client and quickly link to what's going on with the client discussion. There's a lot of great functionality that the firm directory has where things can be promoted, or you can add particular tasks, or as Ramin mentioned, @mention. But having this all in a contextualized fashion where I can quickly get it as an attorney without having to go to a lot of different disparate data sources really promotes that efficiency. I'm going to change gears here for a second and toggle into more of the firm directory portion of this. So I'm going to go into a specific office here. So I'm going to go into my office page and go into my directory. So here we have the firm directory integrated around a office centricity. So I can look at Jessica here, click the down arrow, view her profile. I'll do that momentarily in a different fashion. But some of the key things I can do is look at some of that taxonomy and skills that Neudesic has brought to the table. So I want to find someone who has a skill in bankruptcy litigation. And I've narrowed down within my office of Los Angeles that Jessica has that particular skill. So now maybe I want to go look at her particular profile. So in this environment here, not only am I going to see Jessica's profile from the firm directory with all her skills, expertise, bar admissions, etc., but also I can pull in different pieces of content from the key line of business systems. So I can maybe pull in her billable hours or her recent, if I want to look at her recent documents, I can do that. Or I can look at her contacts she has. And this is just an example of how it could look. In a real world environment, we'd leverage Jim and his team over at Fireman Company to create a great user experience out of this. And assuming you have security rights and how you want to set that up, that can all be dependent. But really being able to pull the firm directory information into an environment where you can contextualize it around all the other work product an individual is doing really helps the attorneys get at the information in a faster, more effective manner. So I'm going to shift over into a search here. So let's do a search for Arnold. So here I have done a search for Arnold. I have different documents being pulled together, but I'm going to focus on people. And there's Jessica right there. So I can hover my cursor over her. I can see her bio, her skills, her history. I can also see with the different refiners on the left, the pieces that are associated with Jessica. Maybe another way to do a search, and this is a demo environment, so obviously you wouldn't be searching for Neudesic within that, but let me do it here for an example. Neudesic has a very rich taxonomy that allows us to refine using a number of filters on the left. So if I want to find somebody who's done bankruptcy litigation and has that skill, and then maybe I want to make sure they're in New Jersey here, I can quickly narrow down using the refiners on the left to get the 9 people that are in Newark, New Jersey that have the skill that I'm looking for. Allows me to quickly get access to them. Lastly, I want to touch on expertise. So Handshake has the notion of pulling expertise together from all the different line of business systems, basically leveraging your big data to find an expert. So let me run a search here for a stock purchase agreement. And you have all these different pieces of data from the line of business systems. You have a variety of documents written, time entries, hours billed, and that's all really good knowledge to pull together to find an expert. But also pulling in what the firm directory brings to the table around the declarative expertise and the variety of skills really gives the end user a full 360-degree view of who an expert is within a firm. So in this example, I've run a search for a stock purchase agreement, and I could have done a targeted search at the beginning for bios, clients, or for the Neudesic skills. But here I can now look at all the variety of pieces of information that's filtering Brooke to the top of this. So Brooke has a firm directory skill here that she handles stock purchase agreements, or she's written 5 documents. This allows me to identify and talk to Brooke about what she's doing around stock purchase agreements or view her work product. So we know that Brooke's been declared an expert through her firm directory, so I can have confidence going in to look at her work product. And also I can link back to her firm bio the same way we did before, so I can see more of what she's done with her billings and her work product around that particular instance. So really in conclusion, the marriage of the firm directory, Handshake Software, and Fireman Company within a 3rd generation intranet gives the attorneys the ability to leverage all the variety of resources they have from line of business systems in one pane of glass. It really enables them to become more efficient and effective, and that efficiency allows them to bill more hours, which in turn makes the firm more profitable. So with that, Ramin, I'm going to flip this back over to you.
Thank you, Glenn. So we'd like to open it up now to questions from the audience, and Mike from our side will read them out. So
Yep.
Mike, when you get a chance, let's field any questions from the group. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramin, and thanks, Jim and Glenn. So yeah, we're going to open up the floor for questions. Again, please enter your questions in the questions window of the control panel. While you do that, I did receive a few. The first one is, how is the integration and services licensed between the 3 firms? Glenn, maybe, or Ramin, would you like to jump in on that one?
Sure. This is Ramin, and I'll pass it to Glenn as well. So the solutions that you've seen are licensed independently by each vendor. But one of the things that's nice about our partnership is we've worked through the implementation process. So for example, the things that Glenn was showing as part of that integration, that is already pre-configured, and we do work together on projects for firms regarding coordination of implementation. So a lot of that work has been done up front. Glenn?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Ramin. And we've had a long experience working at Handshake with Fireman Company, so we've won a couple awards for the intranet work we've done together. And as you've seen in the two examples that Ramin shared with Built and the firm that won the Nielsen Norman Award, we've worked closely together as all three of us. Really working together really drives a great project for the firm, and it's rather seamless. So as Ramin mentioned, we license this all separately, but together we work very, very closely hand in glove to make sure that your firm gets the best possible solution.
Great. Let's see, next question. So when is the integration you showed between Handshake and Firm Directory and the Neudesic Pulse Social collaboration, when is that available? Ramin, would you like that one?
From our perspective, it's available now. Again, the work has been done, and we actually have clients implementing it. Glenn, you want to add anything?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been, as Ramin mentioned, it's been pre-configured, and it's ready to go today.
Okay. Next question, and maybe I'll direct this one to Jim. So with regards to the design process, the question is, what's the design process like?
Well, typically we have a very well-defined and well-executed process, but it starts out with getting to know what the current intranet is and does and how it impacts the firm, and then we work with the firm to interview attorneys and start to methodically document the requirements and build those from all the way from interview all the way up into a detailed software requirement specification on what needs to be done. And in the middle there we do iterative wireframing just to make, and every deliverable is guaranteed to do two things. Make sure the solution that we help you craft is the one that's right for your firm and your culture, and as well as tracking back all the requirements to their source. So if there's any question about what decisions were made, you can leverage the documentation produced to prove them out. And just noting, we work so often and so well with Firm Directory and Handshake, the software requirement specification can get very detailed when leveraging their technologies, just because we know what their solutions are capable of and how far we can push them to do interesting things.
Ramin and Glenn, anything to add on that one?
Not from my side. I think that was perfect. Yeah, we've enjoyed a long working relationship on design with Fireman Company, which is typically project specific. But a lot of the work that we've done with Glenn and his team in Handshake has actually been done ahead of time, just to make sure the design is specific to what we think customers would like to see. However, all of that is also subject to configuration changes by individual firms, so that flexibility exists as well.
With the pre-configuration design that we've started out with here, Ramin and I and Jim consulted quite a few mutual clients to get the best idea of how to really contextualize this data and pull it all together. So a lot of your peers had hands in working with us on this.
Great, thank you guys. Let's see, let's do one final question. So do you have to use all three solutions together? Can they be leveraged independently? Guys, I'll leave it to you. Who would like to take that one?
I could start and add it to others. So, I mean, we realize as we've gone through this process with different firms that depending on the firm's current decision process and rollout and just resources, all of these pieces don't necessarily always come together at the same time. Having a sequence or an approach to it, having that flexibility is important. So the answer to that question is no. I mean, you can work specifically with a solution of choice, but then also be assured that in the future, if you do want to add some of the integration and other capabilities, that work has been done up front as part of the partnership. Jim, Glenn, if you want to jump in.
I mean, from my part, when we engage in projects where sometimes we go into a firm and they have one or both of our partners' products, and we focus on trying to drive the best solution and the best design for that firm and what their needs are. So it's really a very collaborative process, not only between the partners when we have an opportunity to work together in a firm, but with the client specifically to drive down to get the most value.
Great.
And from our perspective, obviously Handshake's been around for about 15 years now, and we have a very, very large market share in legal, about half the top 100 and about 45% of the top NLJ 350. So we're in a lot of the firms that we're probably talking to here today. So as you bring in the firm directory, just know that it does integrate and work seamlessly. And if you've licensed the firm directory and rolled that out, just know that if you decide to start this third generation intranet with the combination of Fireman and us, and now the product that you have with the firm directory, it all will work well together. So the projects can be started in any number of orders.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So we want to be cognizant of everyone's time, obviously, and give maybe a little bit of time back. So just to kind of round things out here, a recording of the webinar will be emailed to everyone on today's call. For the folks on today's call, if you'd like to set up a customized demonstration, we'd be happy to offer that for you and your team. I'll also include information on that to set that up in my email for today's audience. So in the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on today's call. And we wish you a great day and a great weekend. Thank you very much, all.